Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. We'll start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the board wants to provide ample opportunity for public comment on matters that come before us. Your input is important. If you wish to address an item already on the agenda, we ask that you do so when that item comes up for discussion. If you have a comment on a matter not on the agenda, this is the time during our meeting for such comments. The board would like to remind everyone in attendance that to avoid violations of individual rights of privacy, a member of the public wishing to address the board during this time will not be allowed to make comments about any student, staff member, or member of the general public during this time. Does anyone wish to speak at this time? Okay, so we have called an emergency meeting as things, within the school district have not improved as we've continued from last Thursday. Daily correspondence with the superintendent, administration, trying to figure out what is the right course of action for us to take to try and mitigate some of the issues that they are presented with on a day-to-day basis. So I will turn it over to Mrs. Hedlund to talk about what we are proposing.
Thank you. So first of all, I want to start on a very positive note. We got notified this afternoon that we received the ELC grant from DPHHS for $45,000. And so we can utilize a portion of that funding to hire. And so we are going to be hiring a school health coordinator. So this person would fulfill the duties of the grant, which includes the rapid testing, and they'll be thoroughly trained in that through DPHHS. And that will be for staff that opt in. It's completely optional for staff. And we could also utilize the program and the rapid tests that we receive from that program for students who are symptomatic. Seem to be the set. There was an option. There's an option to do screening or test students that are symptomatic, and parents seem to like the option of utilizing them when their students are symptomatic more so than for random screening. So those are the options, but we will start with staff and utilize that program for rapid testing with our staff. And that way we can keep teachers here, and if they have symptoms, we can test them and make sure that it's not COVID and keep our classrooms going. So that would be very helpful. And this position would be very helpful for us administrators because we've been spending a lot of our time contact tracing, gathering homework, and collaborating with the health department. So this person would take a lot of that work off of our plates. So we are excited to receive that funding and work with DPHHS and Broadwater County Health Department on that in collaboration. And then I just wanted to talk about some of the things that we've done differently at the school since our last meeting. So we put the safety and health sanitation precautions back in place in the school lunchroom. So we put the screens up over the food, and the younger students are getting served the salad bar items by staff. So they still have all the same great lunch choices. Our kitchen does an amazing job, and they're very passionate about making sure that the students still have all the healthy, fresh fruits and vegetables to choose from and everything. They just get served the items now so that we don't have as many hands in the salad bar area, which I taught kindergarten, so I think that's a great idea if you've ever seen those little guys go through there. And so we are doing that, and the classes are sitting together at tables with their class, so not all intermingled. So that way it's more of a cohort model, like was in place last year. However, the students aren't distant, so they can sit together with their classmates. And so also just trying to make sure we're distancing as much as possible. Staff are trying to distance from each other as much as possible when meeting, and those kinds of things. We put up signs for mask encouragement, and we have masks out made available to people who would like to wear them. And so those are some of the things that we've put in place since last school board meeting. And the principals might have a few others that they want to chime in on. I don't know if you guys want to share any other. Did I hit most of the main?
We've just done cohort homerooms as well, so we're not moving kids around anymore.
So in the lower grades, we're
Yeah,
not moving the
K5.
kids around as much. So they're staying in those cohorts. Great. Of course, outside, we're not as worried about. And I think it's really important that they have that time to play outside with all of their friends. And so we're trying to keep that in place. And then as we go into our policies, one of the things, and after talking to families over the weekend and trying to manage the cases that came in over the weekend, the health department and us school administrators and our board chair, we were here working on these policies and thoughts over the weekend and handling cases that were coming in. So one thing that became very clear, and I can understand our parents getting frustrated that their children are being sent home for these periods of time and learning the opportunity to be losing the opportunity to be in school and having those learning experiences, especially when I had a call, a couple of parents that had already had their student out and then had to have their student out again. So that is really hard, and we understand that. So we put together some new ideas that we are hoping would keep students in school and give families the option of sending their students to school with a mask or having them go to remote learning. So that is what we are proposing for changes in policy 1905. And policy 2050 is a remote learning policy that just goes along with that remote learning time to make sure we have everything up to par so students still get credits and all of that for the time that they're out if they choose to go remote. And one other thing in the beginning, under symptoms of illness, we expanded on that a little bit just to clarify what those symptoms are. There's been some confusion and some challenges also with students being here that are sick and showing symptoms. And that's just a really important part we wanted to clarify and put a little bit more detail in so we could handle those situations. And so those are the symptoms that are added are from the CDC website, the COVID symptoms at the beginning of policy 1905. So those are the key points to the revisions.
Board have questions or comments?
I don't have any questions. I think that's pretty straightforward, but I wonder if it'd be useful to kind of explain the policy to the folks, and just some of the revision detail around that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So the amendments state that the school district will require staff, volunteers, visitors, and students in classrooms that have had recent confirmed positive cases to wear a mask, regardless of vaccination status, for 10 days, if that's the timeline you guys see fit. 7 to 10 days seems to be the recommended. Following notification of being a close contact for the period of their quarantine recommendation from the county. So families, instead of sending the whole classroom home, like has been currently happening, the families would have the option to send their student with a mask or to stay home for the time that the health department has designated. And we did talk to the Broadwater County Health Department today about this as well. And that's the main component of it. However, when students are able to social distance at 6 feet, if we can do that in classrooms, they could take their masks off even under that provision.
And then those are the close contacts.
Yes.
Okay.
So rather than having to stay home, they could choose to come with a mask, or they could choose to be remote for that time.
Those are non-symptomatic close contacts.
And they can't have any symptoms.
Right.
Maybe we should just read.
Yeah, we can read
Read
it.
14 through line 25. I think that gives pretty much the bulk of what. You can read it. Do you want me to read it? Or?
I don't care either way. I can read it. I
I'll
wrote.
let you.
Okay. The school district requires all staff, volunteers, visitors, and students in classrooms that have had recent confirmed positive cases to wear masks regardless of COVID-19 vaccination status for 10 days following notification of being a close contact or for the period of their quarantine recommendation from the county. Close contacts are required to go home immediately at the onset of any symptoms. In the middle school and high school, students do not have designated classrooms. Therefore, the same requirement will occur for students who are determined to be a close contact. Those requirements are to wear a mask regardless of COVID-19 vaccination status for 10 days following notification or for the period of their quarantine recommendation from the county. Close contacts are required to go home immediately at the onset of any symptoms. If guardians do not agree to have students wear a mask and the students do not have a health provision listed below, the student will be assigned to remote learning in accordance with policy 2050, regardless of COVID-19 vaccination status. And so we do have some students that have medical conditions that don't allow them to wear a mask, hearing impaired or different health challenges that are listed out here. And so with the doctor's note that there would be exceptions made for those students. So students and staff may remove their face covering mask or shield if they are at their individual workstation, and 6 feet distance is strictly maintained between individuals. We'll post the requirement. Requirement is not based on vaccination status. And those are the main points.
No question. Please stand and state your name, please.
Trinity Van Baker. The question here, the discipline action or redirection in accordance with district policies, what is that? Can you phrase that out? It is
On line 19,
1905, line
17.
yes.
Which page?
So
Which page?
this is on the third page. It is right before cleaning and disinfecting.
Oh, okay.
So I can read the email that I have from our attorney in regard to that. There are various school policies and state law in Montana that allow school districts to enforce this policy.
They sign the student handbook, says that, they will prescribe, they will follow the policies and regulations, those things that are in the book policies of the district. And so there is a specific policy that leads to that says that if somebody is disruptive, if somebody, ends up being, violates that policy for behavior, in school, on school grounds, at a school activity, if part of the student body that subjects them to, discipline. Their infractions for, if somebody were to have alcoholic beverages or for bullying or whatever. So that doesn't limit it to somebody who's, say, gets into the face of a teacher and administrator over this issue. So that actually can lead into a disciplinary situation.
Okay, but if somebody doesn't wear a mask, let's say, and they're not disruptive whatsoever, but they still refuse to wear a mask, what's the process for this, I mean, you get the police involved? I just want to know does somebody know what the process is for like, if somebody does that? I'm not saying I'm just saying, when you put something in place that says you're gonna have disciplinary action for this specific thing, let's say you say they have to wear a mask and they don't. Even if they're not disruptive, they're completely calm, they refuse to leave the room and they sit there with no mask. What does that look like?
Trinity, are you asking, like, if, in the context that we're talking about right now, that if someone was identified as close contact and they want to be in school, we're asking them wear that, we're having them wear that mask for 10 days? Is that what are you talking about a mask mandate in general, like the whole school is mandating masks, or?
Because it says in here, some rooms or buildings will be indicated as mask required, right? So I'm assuming this applies to everywhere the mask is required.
Only under the circumstances that they've been identified as a close contact and have received quarantine recommendation from the county.
That's
it.
Okay, so so this is a policy technically enabling somebody to come back to school that maybe wouldn't have because of close contact if they were in a mask.
Correct.
Correct.
The students that we currently have out, that the whole classrooms have had to been, we want them back at school. We want to be able to keep them at
Well, I
school.
understand that. I'm just
So-
saying, when you state something that disciplinary action will happen.
Right.
If you run into that, then I just wonder if somebody thought about how you actually deal with that?
Yeah, I did talk to our attorney about it, and I did talk to East Helena about it, and they said thankfully they haven't had any issues or had to take it that far. So I have been talking and came up with some of this language and some of these ideas from neighboring school districts that are trying some different things. So we would obviously hope that that would never occur, but Chris Goss, our attorney with MTSBA, said that the district has the authority under the Montana Constitution to adopt and enforce mask rules. If a student refuses to wear a mask or is unable to wear a mask, the district will accommodate that student through the remote learning policy under 2050, which is the other policy that we're talking about tonight. So we haven't talked about, how we would handle that, whether, we would call the parents and obviously try to reason. We would never shame a student. That's a section in here too about harassment regarding face coverings. We don't want any of that to occur. So my thought would definitely be to get a hold of the parents and have that conversation and see if they could come and help us reason with the child or make something take place in a positive direction.
Yes, I just, when you watch some things on social media and stuff, personally, I would take my kid out of school before we had that issue or anything. But if this was to end up like Townsend School, had the police come and rip a kid out because he refused to wear a mask on social media, that would be.
I would hope not, no.
So I just want to know where the line is. If the kid refuses to a certain point, what is actually the you know what I mean?
Yeah, we
Townsend
just,
Schools is already,
Trinity, I guess, the hope in moving forward with this proposal is that giving people that option, giving them a choice, that we don't come to that. That's the hope. But yes, but it's no different than any other disciplinary action throughout the day. We ask kids and we instruct kids daily to do things. They're expected to follow the rules. This becomes a rule. And, obviously the day-to-day handling of that falls on the administration. If it escalates to the point that it comes to the board, obviously it's gone too far, and expulsion is an option at that point. But I think the goal is that giving people a choice, that we won't get to that. That is the hope. We talked a week ago that we have to learn to live with this, and I think we all understand that. But we also, as a board, as a district, have to find ways to mitigate the impact of that for our teachers and for our students. And that's what we're hoping that this does, that giving people the choice on which route they want to go, that we don't have to get to any of those disciplinary actions. Yes.
Lindsay Rickmeyer. First off, thank you, everybody, for your time and for taking the time to talk with the community. I think that's huge, because I know a lot of school boards in other parts of the country are not doing that. I know it'll come up if you have this kid that's been in close contact, quarantine, and I do think this is a better plan than where we were at before, so parents are not out of school or out of work for days at a time. But if a kid is a close contact and they don't have symptoms, they wait their allotted required time, which I think is 5 days, and get tested and they're negative, can they come back to school and take the mask off?
Yes, so that's what it says following the quarantine guidance
Sorry, I
from
was
the.
trying to read.
Yep. Oh, no, I understand. It's complex. So following, it says for the allotted days or according to the quarantine conversation with the county health department. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. So we don't ask people if they're vaccinated or not or anything like that, but if the county health department has that conversation with someone and they're cleared and they're told that they don't need to do any kind of quarantining precautions or something, that could be waived, for example. So I'm not involved in any of that because we don't ask students questions like that. So that conversation happens between you as parents and the health department, and then the students receive their notification if they're close contact, and they usually have a date on there or figure out a date with you, or say if the student tests on this day, they can be clear on this day.
Well, I don't think it matters anymore, does it, with your vaccination status? I think the quarantine rules are the same.
As far as, well, they're a little different, I think. They're
It's
slightly.
days off.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's 10 days versus 14.
Yeah,
Because
and then,
I mean, it spreads whether you're vaccinated or not, you'll get it or not get it.
If someone's positive, I know that it's 10 days isolation either
Sure,
way.
Sure, but if as a contact,
But,
if you're vaccinated.
Yeah, I'm
or
not sure.
yeah, they're still asking vaccinated people to wear a mask when they're out in public if they're
Sure.
choosing not to quarantine themselves in public. So kind of like what your guys are doing.
Sure. All right, thank you.
Yet we leave those deciding factors up to the health department. It's pretty complicated depending on everyone's different circumstance.
I would just like to make a comment.
Please,
I'm
just-
Melinda Easter. I appreciate you guys working hard at creating a policy. I have 4 children in this school, and I feel that this really reaches a great compromise for the safety of our students and also for the mental health aspects and for the learning aspects, to bridge that gap, to keep the kids progressing forward, to allow them to continue in their activities, and also to remain safe. So I just want to say thank you guys for your hard work and good thoughts, and just appreciate you all.
Thank you.
I was gonna make a motion. Are we, oh, there we go.
Can I ask a couple questions before I gotta vote? First off, thanks for all you guys do. John
State your
Blythe.
name, please.
John Blythe. Thanks for everything you guys do. So you talked about a 10-day quarantine for kids for specific classrooms or cohorts, right? How are you gonna mark those classrooms so other kids know what those are? And or parents or visitors coming into the school? And then how are you gonna track those kids that are in those schools so they make sure they meet that minimum 10-day requirement? And then the last thing I want to know is what you're doing in between those 10 days as far as cleaning the classrooms and things of that nature. And wrapping up with another last question is.
Better start writing.
What is the reporting requirement from the county health to the school in order to let students and parents know that their kids should or should not be quarantined?
Okay.
We
I
get
only
it.
asked that because I got a call on Friday from the health department that said, hey, my kid's close contact. And then when I called the county health department back, said, hey, what do you want me to do? They said, oh, our mistake. Wrong kid. So out of abundance of caution, I'm leaving my kid home right now until he either has any symptoms or I can go ahead and get him tested. But that's where I want to know where the notification processes are where those lapses are.
Mhm.
And then more importantly, what we're doing as far as cleaning those classrooms for those kids if we're gonna make them wear a mask for 10 minutes.
Great questions. Okay, so, and there can be some confusion because with positive student and we do the contact tracing, so we look at who their seatmates are or their buddies they're spend a lot of their time with during the day, or a teacher that they might work very closely with for support or something like that. And then we list those as close contacts. We send those over to the county health department. So once they talk to the parents and find out, well, actually, my student wasn't in school on the days that count as the exposure window because we were out for something else, or they talk to you and the students weren't together for more than 15 minutes at a time, or that kind of thing, they might determine that they're not a close contact and the quarantine's not necessary. So that could cause a confusion, maybe like you're describing. And this weekend, I did try to call families and give them a heads up if I thought they might be getting a call from the health department, just so that you didn't drive to work in Helena or Bozeman or somewhere, or get started with your day and then be called and be told by the health department that you needed to come pick your kids up, at 10 in the morning on Monday or whatever. So that's why I did reach out to families over the weekend, and instead of waiting for the health department to contact you, which is what we usually do. Just as I heard from parents in the last meeting, that made things very challenging for them to drop everything at work and make it to the school. So that's one thing. But the county health department notifies us. From what I understand, the state system uploads at 9 every morning and around 4 o'clock every afternoon. And then they go through their system and they go through the cases and identify any school-aged children and then compare it to our school roster. And if the student attends school here, they fax us, because that's the legal way we have to do it. They fax us the notification of the positive student, and then we do the contact tracing and fax them back possible close contacts and their phone numbers so they can call you and have that conversation with you as a parent.
But then do you go back and validate that individual's not in school, like my boy, who should be or should not be a close contact? Who evaluates that? Is that you or the health department?
No, we do that. So we have a file system set up and we have them by date and age. And then so we go through and see, and this is why we're really excited about this school health coordinator, because this takes hours a day. We go through and we check attendance to make sure if they're supposed to be out, they're out. The teachers know, for one thing, and then when they're supposed to return, and we try to communicate with the families, and we're talking to them and making sure we get the homework to them, which is another thing that we're working on, and I think we could do a better job at. So we're excited to have someone designated for that in the future, to be remote learning for those that do choose to do the remote learning, someone to coordinate that and check in with those students and make sure they don't need any help, they have what they need, they're getting their work done, that kind of stuff. So that's something that we're putting into place also. So that's how the notification works, and trying to keep it. And Miss Harmon and I were on the phone for quite a while today, trying to make sure we had dates straight on certain students and that kind of thing. And then also, like, yeah, if I know someone had been positive, like when school started, for example, and then they're a close contact, I don't give their name to the health department because I know that they are cleared, because if you've had it within the last 90 days, you're cleared. So I don't want the family to have to go through the rigmarole. So I'm trying to keep track of all of it and who's where and had what kind of quarantine. So as far as the cleaning goes, we do the deep cleaning and the fogging machines at night, which is what the school did last year. And we actually hired more janitors this school year and put that into place, especially one of the new things that we're doing is having the janitors clean the facilities after each event in the high school and those sort of things. But the classrooms are deep cleaned every day, and the custodial team's really great about going through and wiping doorknobs all day and all of those kinds of things. And the tables are sanitized before any new group comes to sit at the tables in the lunchroom, for example. So the fogging machines are supposed to kill all of the possible COVID that would be on any surfaces.
And the kids are staying in their own classroom now, right?
Correct.
Got it, okay.
Yep, they're staying in their homerooms.
I know a lot of teachers in the high school, I'm sure in the elementary and junior high as well, also have the wipes in their classrooms, and like a lot of them are having the kids wipe down their surfaces after every class right before they leave, and so they're clean when the next group comes in the same cycle. So
Right.
just doing a lot of that.
We ordered a big box of the COVID sanitizing wipes, and they're nice. They're not real toxic-y. They smell kind of like almonds. It's interesting. I don't know. Anyways, and the kids each get one and wipe down their desk before they have snack and things like that. Or the teacher does it in most of the classrooms. That's what I've been seeing. So that's what we're doing for cleaning. I'm going to finish his questions real quick. And then, did I hit all of them?
I was interested about the labeling.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, we wouldn't try to label the classroom. We would work with the teacher and the parents. We have a draft letter for those that would go out to the parents in that classroom. And then the teacher would just make sure that everyone's wearing their mask when they need to be in that classroom. Obviously not necessary on the playground and that kind of thing, or when they can socially distance. And the remote learning coordinator would be working with those students that are remote, as well as the classroom teacher. I think the really important thing we found is that the remote learning coordinator will be helpful when if the teacher tests positive and is too sick to be teaching or working with those students, which we have had take place, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I was along those lines because I have a small human, so I'm not really sure how the remote stuff is working, but I've talked to lots of people with older kids, and I know some of the younger kids are having to do remote. What does the remote program look like right now? Like, is it fairly easy for kids to move in and out of the remote program as needed? I just wasn't sure really how that's all being done.
Well, and you as principals might want to speak to how that
I
looks
guess
at each
we're
grade
not
level.
doing like the Acellus program that we offered last year.
Mhm.
So it is,
That's what I was gonna explain. We're not gonna do the Acellus. We're actually gonna have it where they'll be following the same class format that they're in. So the lesson plan that say it's kindergarten, the kindergarten teacher will be sharing the lesson plans with the remote coordinator. And so then we're also making sure all the kids can get into Google Classroom. So we'll use Google Classroom, and the remote coordinator has time set up. So maybe kindergarten meets Monday, Wednesday, Friday at a certain time during the day, and she'll work with them on the lesson. Maybe it's introducing whatever that they're working on in class so that they can keep up with their class. And then, so then they'll still have their work that they can do at home. And then they'll log in again through Google Classroom. And basically they get it down pretty fast. They type in their name and they click on a couple buttons and they're there, and they can see a person and talk to them and walk through it. So,
Okay, so it's kind of interactive with
Yes.
them. They're not- Okay.
It's a wide variety in the high school too, and obviously, one of the things in all of this discussion, kindergarten classroom, and we're looking at the high school kids, I mean, it's a totally different thing. So obviously, a lot of times when I speak, it's definitely in the high school world using the Google Classroom and those kind of platforms, online platforms. The kids all know how to get in, get their stuff. We too are rounding up homework and picking stuff up in and out of the office and those kinds of things. They have the option, I know a lot of the teachers will Google Meet with remote students at the same time they're actually teaching that class. So I know there have been students that were quarantined last year for extensive periods of times that were actually sitting in their classrooms on Google Meet, and they can see the other kids in the class. The kids in the class can see, they can interact, they can be a part of the discussion and do all of that. So we've learned a lot in the last year and a half, and I think, even some of the high school teachers are videoing teaching that lesson. So for example, Mrs. Ashman likes to video teaching them math lessons because that works best for her. And then she can video that, post it to Google Classroom. The kids can actually watch her teach them how she did that section or that content. And then they can work on their homework. And then obviously they communicate back and forth constantly, either online, through the phone, whatever they need to do for whatever that kid needs. So it kind of looks it looks a lot different in the high school, and there's a lot of different ways that it can be used, so.
I think that's just a huge component to this all being successful, is just having a really great remote program that the kids can work with and not get totally far.
Well, and the key is, the other thing to me that's important to remember is that, it's all a temporary. We're talking a set amount of days. But then again, I know we have a couple kids in the high school, but they just keep getting hit. They got quarantined initially, and then a family member got it, and then they got it. Those kids, but especially those kids, it's like, okay, what can we do to help this poor kid? And then there's a lot of grace when they come back, with deadlines and allowing them to make up their work and giving them time, to get that stuff caught up, because they can't help the circumstances either. So it certainly isn't held against them, as long as they're making the effort and logging on and doing their work. And we know when they're on and when they're working and when they're not. So definitely.
Andrea Rice. I have two questions. One is, do you guys have any data as far as, I guess this is all in the media and I work in the hospital and I'm like getting, my phone's blowing up saying, you have 160 cases of COVID in your school. Do we have actually a number of how many positive cases we have versus how many kids are quarantined? Go ahead.
So it's really hard to track active cases because, like I said, the dates and even the county, like one day it's 80, the next day it's 56 or whatever, because you can have so many come in or out. And so we are not tracking active cases. Some of the districts were doing that. Like I think East Helena had it on the front of their webpage, for example, last year. And I spoke to them this week, so that's why I'm mentioning them. But it takes almost a full-time position to keep that up to date on active cases and versus quarantines and all of that. So I don't have exact numbers. I can tell you last time I tried to do a count, it was roughly 24 positive students, and I think we were at 9 or 10 staff members. And then we had around 100 in quarantine. I'm trying to think if that was school-wide no, that was school-wide. Yeah. Yeah.
And then the second question I had was, I have one child that handles masks fine, ish. And I have one that doesn't handle them very well at all. And I may choose to do remote learning simply because of his anxiety with the mask. But one question he asked me to ask specifically was, do I have to wear the mask in PE? Because middle school PE is way different than elementary school PE. And I don't think I can do that. And if they do, is there a proviso that he can not participate in PE at school if he's willing to wear the mask throughout the rest of the day? And how would that be handled? Because he said last year he did have to wear the mask even in PE when they were in elementary school.
My thought was that that masks wouldn't be worn in PE, but we did talk about trying to have them outside as much as possible for PE, as long as weather allows. It's been gorgeous out, so.
I think one of the things to remember too, if you, the basic criteria, like the basic foundation that we always go back to is that 6 feet or less for 15 minutes or more. PE is so fluid, the thought that those kids are standing next to each other for a full 15 minutes that close is probably not likely anyways. At least in the high school, again, Brain goes to high school, in the high school setting and that. Now maybe elementary is a little different because they're doing a whole different set of activities. He's in middle school, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, the same question could also, I have kind of on part of my notes, with if this is adopted, how will that work for the sports teams? Exactly, for like practices and, if you have a close contact football player, well, they're outside, but what if we have a close contact volleyball player? I think the same thing kind of applies. If they know they're in a situation where they're sitting in a classroom watching film and they're close contacted, they put the mask on. If they're outside running plays and they're not near anybody, that close for 15 minutes or more, we're likely okay. So just kind of following those formats. That's where my mind goes. I don't know how sound that is, but those are my thoughts.
Strenuous physical activity is one of the provisions.
That's what I was gonna say, the strenuous physical activity is one of the provisions, and what I've asked the PE teacher to do is, if we're in a situation where there's masks, if we're doing something strenuous indoors, they can take the masks off. Try to space those kids and arrange your classroom in a way to where we're not going to be putting kids at risk. And if they're doing something, because sometimes in PE, they are doing more recreational games that are not definitely, playing cornhole or learning horseshoes or
Well,
whatever.
Braylon, everything's fairly
It's-
strenuous.
In those situations, I've asked them that I guess I'm looking back to last year.
Yeah.
I asked them to have the students wear the mask. They're not doing something that is getting the heart rate up and causing, restricted breathing or whatever to do that, and this kind of a judgment thing.
Just a quick follow-up on what Andrea was saying. Did you say in the policy that face shields will be accepted for close contact kids that choose to come to school?
No, it says that they may remove their face covering, and in that sentence on line 43, it does say face shield, but it is masks, and that is what we talked to the health department about, because that's really what they are saying is going to work,
And
or
I
most likely to
completely-
work.
I completely
Yeah.
understand kind of the science behind all of that.
Right.
I have a child that has a lot of difficulty with the mask due to health reasons.
Mhm.
He does fine with the face shield. So would he be somebody that I'd have to keep home because I couldn't send him in a mask?
So, and same with anxiety, if you can bring in a medical note that
So
would.
that's accepted for those conditions,
Mhm.
even if they're close contact?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
Has the health department clarified the types of masks that people wear? I just know, within the hospital walls, we aren't allowed to wear anything other than medical masks, it's been told. It's been drilled into us that cloth masks are ineffective. And we literally, they don't allow us to wear cloth masks within St. Peter's. So I just am curious if that has been, anything has been addressed about that with the county health department regarding the types of masks that are required.
No, we ordered medical masks, and there's different levels of even those, but we did our best to order the medical masks, and we will have them available to students. But if someone comes in a mask from home, we're not going to be the mask police on what kind of mask they're wearing. Yes,
So
Please stand and state your name.
sorry.
Tiffany Mouse. My littlest guy has a pretty severe speech delay, so he relies on seeing his teacher's mouth and looking at other kids' mouth to figure out how to form those words.
Mhm.
So would he, A, be able to get away with wearing a face shield if he was a close contact, and B, how would that work with his teacher?
Good question. So if you look over at Miss Molly over here, she's got a mask on. That is a type of mask that we see a lot of our teachers wear if they're working with students or have students that may be challenged by that, or they will wear a face shield during the times and try to just keep a little distance during those times with those students. And same thing like in the provisions, if there's someone with communication problems, that is a provision. So, and these we just ask that it says that about doctor's notes on here.
So would I need to get a note from his actual pediatrician or just his speech therapist?
Either would work.
Okay, and then next question has to do with symptoms. I know I talked to you and Ms. Hartman on Tuesday. So when it comes to symptoms, my youngest woke up on Thursday. He had a terrible barky cough. And so I kept him home Thursday. Friday, he woke up, didn't look any better. Kept him home Friday. Saturday, he was starting to feel better. So I did an at-home COVID test. It was negative. Sunday, he was on the uphill. He went to school Monday. Fine, sent him with a face shield just in case. Tuesday at 8:30, I get a phone call. You have to come pick up your kid. He has a cough. And I was like, okay, but I gave him an at-home COVID test. It was negative. He has a face shield. We're asking all kids to stay home if they have a cough or if there's any sign of illness. And I'm like, okay, but we all know coughs can take weeks up to months to go away. So if you're asking these kids to stay home, I mean, this is his second cold since the beginning of school. So he would have only been to school if he stayed home the whole time, a week. So there needs to be some sort of guideline with that because this school is a petri dish. My oldest son stayed home yesterday because of a bellyache. So viruses still go around, colds still go around, and not everything is automatically COVID.
That's one of the most difficult things. And we're not doctors, obviously, and we've kind of taken the hard line that if kids are fevers, coughing, sick, I realize they can just have a cold, but to be on the safe side, we have to, I don't know, that's difficult.
So are they supposed
Definitely
to
a
stay home
challenge.
the whole entire time they have a cough,
That's a difficult.
even though they
thing.
have a negative COVID test?
Now that changes things to me, but I don't know, I'm not the, yeah.
Once we have the health
Yeah.
coordinator in place, will they be able to do rapid testing and alleviate some of that?
Yes, if we choose to offer the rapid testing to students.
But the
So
parents are voluntary.
once we develop that plan, if we choose to make that an option to parents, then parents could say, yes, we'd like them to have a rapid test, and then we could go off of that result. So of course, it would be completely opt-in. And then, so it says on here, the students may return after 24 hours, fever-free without fever-reducing medication, when they no longer have symptoms, or when a doctor's note is provided that the student is healthy and able to return. So we have a student, for example, that has bronchitis right now and is going to have a bad cough for weeks probably. And the doctors cleared them to come back to school so they can be back at school.
Because here's the thing, my insurance doesn't cover COVID tests. They're $200 a test. So if I'm going and taking all 3 of my kids to get tested for COVID, that's $600. So I can't just be like, okay, go get a COVID test and so you can go back to school. There needs to be, so that's why I got the at-home ones, because my oldest, the first week of school was actually a close contact, and we were never told that she was a close contact. She sat right next to a student that tested. She came to school extremely sick. She tested positive. My daughter came home and told me, I'm like, oh. So I went out and bought the at-home COVID test for her because she is high risk.
Mm-hmm. So in order for the COVID test to be considered, you just have to go through the process with the county health department. So I believe they ask you to submit a photo of it and some information. And then so the students that test negative, they send me those results as well. So that would count then if you went through that process. But that's what's going to be nice if we do offer the BinaX rapid tests. They're thought to be the most,
That's what I have.
they're thought to be the most reliable. And it would be at no charge to the families, obviously, then.
And can you purchase those tests with the COVID money that you've received?
The grant that we just received,
So, it looked like Broadwater County received $2,500 per student.
for the ESSER funds? Yes, we can buy supplies with that. And then also it's a requirement of the grant that we just received that a portion of that, it couldn't all be spent on salary for the health coordinator, that a portion of that be spent on supplies and equipment.
And so what is your process then to decide if those tests would be available for students?
Just we need to get this person in place and have them go through the training and then develop the plan, so that we have a comprehensive plan that's created that the board will approve, and we would definitely take parents' input on that again.
Are you asking if we would supply tests to parents? If we would supply the test kit?
No,
Oh,
no, just if, if somebody was willing to come to you, if they didn't have the money, and that's how they chose to test. So exactly what you described.
Would it be possible for the school to supply test kits?
The
To just hand
person,
them out, or?
Yeah, why not?
no, it says it right in the grant paperwork that,
And what about with the ESSER funds?
I'm not sure on that one. That's a good question. I'm not sure. I know within the grant it says that the person that's trained to administer the tests has to be the one
Right.
that does it. And then we have to log each test in the system just like they do at the clinics and hospital. We have to, notate each test that is used.
But if the school
And
were to
provide
buy some, if
documentation.
we're able to buy some with ESSER funds, and then, I mean, there's for at-home use. Would the school be able to supply them to parents then, like a Binax or one of the other ones?
Possibly. I don't know if that's something that the county health department would be interested in doing either. The ones that we have right now from the county health department that we have been utilizing for staff just come with the one big bottle of solution. The county purchased them for the fire fighting camps. And so you can't hand one out to somebody. So I don't know what the cost difference is in those kind of things.
Well, what if the parent came to the school and asked the same question rather than taking one home? And took to have the test here.
And I think that's what we're moving towards. But I
Yeah.
think it takes, as she said,
Yeah.
the board adopting that policy,
Yeah.
getting somebody in place to
To do
do
that.
that.
Trying to
is
do
the-
that.
Is the key, having somebody that we can have do that.
But that could happen, that the potential is there.
Yes.
Well, I guess, if there's a financial problem in the school, we were able to purchase those at-home tests, could the school give them to parents to use? Because you said that the county health department would accept the results of those?
Yeah, so I guess where it gets tricky, and this is already something that we're coming across with the staff, is we have X amount of tests, and some people want to test before, just precautionary for this or that, or how do you decide do they need to be symptomatic if you're going to give them a test? Is it for the student or for the grandparent, or so kind of some parameters around that could get a bit messy, is just the thought. So that's something we can think about though. And with the ELC grant, the school district can choose to keep it for staff. I know that's what Lockwood did last year, just utilized it for staff because the community didn't seem interested in having their students tested at the school. But in other schools, they are using it with students.
Is there a limit to the number of tests that come with that grant?
Nope, just the budget.
Okay. But we can we talked about augmenting salary also if necessary.
Yep.
With other funds. Okay.
Yep, there's ESSER funds for supplies and all of the gear that needs to be worn for the test administration and all of that.
Well, and later on, during the consideration of that, as we move forward on that, in my mind, part of that consideration would be, are these particular students perhaps at risk? And if they are, maybe that makes it a difference. Just a thought.
Okay.
My daughter's playing volleyball, so I'm gonna take off, but I wanted to know what you're passing today. So essentially what you're saying you're doing is if you would have to send these kids home through contact tracing, but instead you're gonna have them wear a mask for 10 days in school, or is this gonna affect more or less than that?
Just in school.
I mean, is the kids that would be sent home through contact tracing or something like that, that are now staying in school with a mask, is that what we're?
Yes, it's the ones that have been identified because of, we get the notification of a positive test. These guys then do the contact tracing, send that back to the county health, who then issues the quarantine or isolation orders. Then they come back to us and we hand them out. So it would be those kids that have been identified through that investigation that then have the choice to either go home like they're currently doing or to stay in school with a mask.
But we're set up now better for, we'll have a remote coordinator, so if they are home, we'll have someone who can work with them directly.
So, quick follow-up question, how many people is that? Is that all the teachers that doing their own classes again, or is it?
No, we'll have one remote coordinator, and hopefully with this option, we won't have as many kids out. We won't have to have classes going home. Maybe we'll have a couple of kids that their parents choose not to have wear that mask. So then that coordinator will work with those couple of kids and keep on track.
And the positive kids, obviously.
And the
Are out because they're
positive.
positive.
And the
Yeah.
positive.
Or they
Are not coming.
They're not coming, yes, because they're symptomatic or whatever, yes.
Well, first of all, you guys are doing an awesome job. You're on exactly the right path right now. So the kids that are close contact quarantine, do any new rules apply with bus since they already have to wear masks on there?
That is a federal rule.
Okay.
We can't touch it.
But close contacts can still ride the bus home. They don't have to be provided a ride home. Since the bus is already implementing mask rules, they don't have to now ride. Okay.
And we would just try to distance as much as
Okay,
possible,
perfect,
which
yeah.
I believe they're already doing. And they're trying to have families and friend groups sit together on the bus as
Okay,
well. Cohorts, that kind of thing.
And I was informed by county health that they were okay to ride the bus, so.
Okay, perfect. I know it came up with my daughter last week because there was a question and she ran the bus.
Yeah, they were all back and forth and they finally got a final answer on that one.
Just double checking they could still ride the bus.
And they've been doing their best and they've been great to work with. It was difficult at the beginning of the school year, but once we got a plan in place and got into the swing of things, unfortunately, I have heard stories of certain cases being missed or that kind of thing. But they've been really good about sending the morning facts and the afternoon facts and going back and forth with us. And so we have a pretty good system in place now. This morning, the fax machine went off and I was like, oh no. And then it said, no cases, big smiley face to this morning. So that was good news. Yeah.
And again, I think, I mean, not everybody does it and it's not 100%, but I think for the most part, the parents are being really responsible. I know we've dodged several bullets the last week and the week before with high school kids because yes, they got close contact and some of them were actually positive, et cetera, but they have been out of school for days and days and days because their parents pulled them when they got sick. And that just saved us all of, the exposure that would have happened had they been in school that whole week long until they got quarantined. So we appreciate that so much. That has helped us a ton in the high school.
We've been really lucky with the last 2 teachers that tested positive as well, that they had been distancing themselves from their students and from other colleagues and been wearing masks. And so we didn't have to quarantine anyone or have any close contacts with those last couple of cases. So that was good. So I think we're making good strides in the right direction.
I'm gonna go watch Minnie's play.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, I think
We're
everybody.
all getting excited to watch
everybody's had an
volleyball. So
opportunity to speak between this time and the last time. We did have some public comment emailed in. I'm not going to read that. All the board has read it and they'll take it under consideration. But I do think we're to the point where we can move forward with the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the policy 1905 as revised. Since we are under our emergency declaration, it can be approved just on first reading only.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve policy 1905 as revised. Is there any further discussion?
I would just add a couple comments. I just wanted to do that the administration's done a great job in this, handling this situation. Thanks you guys very much. And you've done a great job in developing and tailoring a solution out of this policy. So that's really appreciated. And I think just a couple more points around that. You know, the revision of the policy really provides a practical mitigation strategy and one that speaks to keeping students and staff and faculty and administration safe. So that's really very much appreciated. That was a concern I've had throughout the week. It gives it also is a great compromise solution in that it gives parents an opportunity to choose. An opportunity to choose how they would like their kids to attend given these particular situations. And again, it's just a really good compromise in my mind, and I think you've done a really great job. So kudos to you guys.
Thank you. I appreciate all of the board's time and efforts as well.
Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes.
Well, then I would move to approve policy 2050 as well.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt policy 2050. Is there any further discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion passes. Yeah, I would just like to add, I kind of ended last time, it was late. I do appreciate everybody that participated both at the last meeting and this meeting. Honestly, I had some concerns that we would be able to keep it civil and respectful, and both meetings did. We really appreciate your time and your effort to come in, and I extremely appreciate the respectfulness and the civility that everybody kept during both meetings. It is greatly appreciated. With that, the meeting is adjourned.
Oh, 1 second, I'm sorry, I should have done this at the beginning, and I'll just give you a minute. I think one key that we're missing to this, and we can maybe put it on the agenda for the next board meeting, we have got to rally around the staff. We have got to come up with something to get these people built back up. For the people that have been ill, they're going to have after effects more than likely as many people have. They were exhausted going into the illness. You were exhausted coming into this year. I would like to see a survey go out to the teachers, staff. I don't know what that survey looks like, but I would honestly want to know from their hearts what they need. You guys did an amazing job of accommodating an incredible middle of the road under this situation. What do you need? And I know that's a hard question, but if we do not build these people up, we are going to get beat in the fourth quarter.
We've already been talking.
Yeah. We have morale planning in place, so we are working on it. Yep.
And I know the community is more than willing and ready to get behind that. We are in one here, and this has been tough for everybody. I was haunted by the fact that when I realized it wasn't teachers against bad parents at the last board meeting, that it was teachers screaming for a lifeline. We have got to get together.
Yeah, it's
So
been
sorry I came out of sequence, but I wanted to.
very challenging.
Meeting still adjourned.
Thank you. Please join us for the volleyball game.
Yeah, let's go.